Oh, they're civil wings. Thank you so much. I'll take one of those. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah. Some in the printers, we do.
We have 4.
That's true.
We have 3 right now.
3 out of 4 though. So
Are we projecting?
We are live streaming. We
Excellent.
are on YouTube right there.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right.
I'm gonna give you the
comms. Nice. Thanks, Scotty.
Uh-oh. Is that the-
Uh-oh.
It's still there.
It's there.
There
It's
you go.
yeah. Is that weird thing? I already did that earlier, so.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to call to order this legislative committee meeting for October 24th, 2025. I'm Julie Hoy.
Vanessa Nordyke.
Irvin and Brown.
Nice. And we have a cadre of city staff here, I'm sure to inform us fully on all things legislative. So let's get started. Discussion, federal budget update from Mark Diedrich and Terry. Are you both here?
I think it's just me here today, so I'll do my best to do the work of 2. So the very short update is the federal government is shut down, and
Moving on.
we're in, I think, day number 24 of the federal government shutdown. This has been, I would say, a frustrating one, mainly because I think in every other shutdown that I've ever been involved in over the years, at the beginning, I kind of see this is the deal that needs to be struck. This is where this side needs to go. This is where this side needs to go, and this is where we're going to finish. And you kind of knew where the end game was going to end up. You had to go through some hoops and different things like that in order to get there. And this one, from the beginning was like, I don't really see where this ends. I don't really see what the end game is. And I feel the same way now that I do there. I don't think that we've seen things really develop. I don't think we've seen the kind of where both sides, like where one side needs to give, where the other side needs to get, and how we kind of get into an agreement or to reopen things up. We are starting to hit some of kind of the pressure points that traditionally have ended government shutdowns in the past. Among those have been, there was the one with some of the cut off at the end of programs like SNAP and some of those other kinds of programs that affect millions of people nationwide. When those have happened, that creates a lot of hurt and pain among people, and that oftentimes kind of brought people on board in order to kind of bring an end to the shutdown. We also are, we've passed the first pay period, and we're coming very close to the second pay period where federal employees are not going to be paid. And this is mainly an issue for those who are not being furloughed, who are actually not allowed to be furloughed, and who are working full time. The administration was able to move some stuff around and find the ability to actually pay our active duty military for their first paychecks. They did not miss their first paycheck. That the route that they went in order to do that is not something that's going to be available to them for the next paycheck. So at that point in time, they will not be paid. Air traffic control has also been often kind of, I remember in the last shutdown, that was kind of a breaking point there, in that they're not allowed to be furloughed, but the rate at which they were calling in sick went up dramatically as the shutdown dragged on last time around, which was like 6 years ago or 7 years ago. And they just got notice today that they're not going to be paid. They're going to miss the next pay period, their next paycheck. So there are things like that have kind of traditionally had impacts on how things go, and we'll have to kind of see where things go then. The Senate is going to continue to do, in addition to voting most days to just pass the House continuing resolution, short-term continuing resolution, has kind of proceeded as business as usual. They've been passing other authorization bills. They've been doing hearings. They've been doing a number of other things as if everything is normal and the government's not shut down, which is different. That's different than other past shutdowns. In the past, kind of even on the congressional staffs, they furloughed a bunch of their staff, sent people they deemed non-essential home. This time it's again, it's a weird feeling for me because it just feels different than other shutdowns. It's hard for me to really articulate more than that. The House has taken the opposite approach as the Senate, which is acting as if everything is normal. And the House has basically just been adjourned since the shutdown has been in, which also is different. In the past, like it was a shutdown, everyone felt like they had to be here and be in town to show they were working to try and end the shutdown. Instead, the House has been adjourned for the entire time. Some of that is due to the fact that they don't want to, the speaker does not want to, there was a special election in Arizona to replace a member who passed away, and the speaker doesn't want to have to swear that person in, which if they came into session, they would have to because of some procedural some procedural thresholds that would happen, which would cause them to hold some votes they don't want to actually hold on something totally unrelated to the shutdown. But it's also created kind of a weird dynamic. Again, you have one side that is in session and working normally, one side that's just completely absent. So that's been the thing that's been kind of dominating everything that's out there. This continuing resolution that we're voting on, so doing a clean one on that, only if they were to come in and pass it right now, only lasts like an additional 2.5 weeks beyond that. So even if the Senate were to step in and pass a clean CR, we could be right back into a shutdown just a couple of weeks after that. The long-term issues on this have not been, on funding the government, have not been resolved or dealt with. So puts a lot of kind of stuff in doubt, and like I said, it's really kind of taking up all the oxygen in the room on a lot of things, and is just a lot of fun in general. So that's really what's going on. That's the main thing that's out there. Everything else is on hold until kind of this can get fixed and get sorted out.
Anybody have any questions, thoughts? No? Okay. Well, thank you, and I'm sorry for the hard times.
It's just very frustrating. It feels if a lot of it just feels very unnecessary. Just kind of I'm not very unnecessary, completely unnecessary, and it's frustrating to kind of see everything kind of go through that. So hopefully we'll get some kind of agreement soon, and we can kind of move forward and start legislating again.
Yeah, just a commentary, but the Senator Merkley's 22-hour role there, did you step in for any of that or just know about it?
I knew about it, and I pulled it up on TV a couple times during it in order to kind of just check in and see how things were going. Yeah, I'm always impressed. I mean, they don't happen very often, but when everyone can actually deliver something where they're speaking for that long, I'm very impressed, because I can't for a minute imagine actually doing that myself. So
yeah, same. Thank you, Mark.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
And welcome, Jeanette, too. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Also, Councilor Nishioka has entered the meeting. And we are then moving on to our state update with Justin Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council and staff. Good to see everybody for our October update. I apologize for not being there, but I think this is for the best. I don't want to be coughing and sneezing and hacking all over everybody, or having a hot flash of my own. So with that, I will cover 3 things. One, the interim calendar. 2, a quick little state legislative update. And 3, the co-chairs had a briefing, and I will do that in reverse order. So why don't I go into right now while we have Mark here to talk a little bit about what some of the federal funding might mean for Oregon. The co-chairs actually had an impact briefing for lobbyists and agency staff, the impacts of HR 1, as Mark just talked about a little bit. Legislative revenue reported a projected $500 million revenue shortfall for this biennium. Legislators will need to rebalance the state budget during the 2026 legislative session. So That tiny little session, which has a massively compressed time frame, has gotten even more compressed with some of the things that we're seeing at the federal level. State agencies are required to submit a 5% budget reduction, which will be considered by Ways and Means subcommittees and or the governor's office prior to that session. So we will keep an eye out, and I know Nikki will be combing through everything to make sure that we've got what those numbers look like. The co-chairs then indicated that revenue reform isn't enough to address the budget shortfall, that tax and economic development reform also needs to be considered. And then finally, Legislative Fiscal presented a preliminary impact report that noted Oregon is expected to lose $15.1 billion under the provision of H.R. 1, the most extensive impacts to Medicaid and SNAP. However, those impacts are still being analyzed as federal guidance on provisions has not yet been provided. So Nikki sat through those briefings and came up with that. We will continue to work with those offices and try to figure out what exactly is going on. But as we can all surmise from that quick little report, things aren't looking real great. So with that, moving back to what's going on at the state level. A couple quick things to recognize. Senator Starr is now the Senate Republican leader. I can't remember if the mayor and I met with Senator Starr, but he has been a long time representative. His father was a senator from that area. He did a lot of really good work in the way back when I worked with him on the Newburgh-Dundee bypass project, which I know Mark and his firm also worked on. Senator Starr, we've got a really good relationship with him. He's always open to listening with folks, and I look forward to introducing the mayor and several members of council to him when we are back in the building. He will be good for us. Second, Lucetta Elmer is now the Republican leader in the House. The mayor and I met with the former Republican leader, Christine Drazen, who has now, as of yesterday, I believe, been appointed to the Senate seat vacated by Daniel Bonham, who's moving on to the federal government. So there was a little, there were some questions around if she would take that seat because, as everybody knows, she ran for governor last election cycle. There is talk, and I think there's rumors of polling being done out there that she's looking at that race again. Either way, they put her into that role, and that is good for us. We have a very good relationship. I know her and the mayor get along pretty well, and we look forward to continuing to work with that relationship. I think that both those on those sides is good news for us as we go into kind of some tough economic times. One other thing to report, there's a ballot initiative going out to look at open primaries. I just saw that in the paper today, wanted to mention that to folks just to get a sense of what goes on in a primary. This was introduced, and Mark, I don't know if you remember, Lynn Lundquist, a former speaker of the Oregon House, passed away many years ago. He was from Powell Butte. He always had this thing about open primaries and wanting to get more Oregonians involved. To give the committee a sense of where we are in Oregon, 987,000 registered Democrats. We've got 729,000 registered Republicans and 1.13 million registered non-affiliated voters. So you can see the impacts that putting those voters into an open primary could make, could get rid of some of the extremes on each side of the parties. Now, these things have been introduced in the past. I wouldn't want to get anybody's hopes up. That being said, the two parties obviously don't like this type of a system, but they talked a little bit about maybe getting something done in 26. If not, then coming back in 2028. And as everybody around this table realizes, the initiative process is really kind of a low bar in Oregon. I think it's like 117,000 signatures required to get something on to change a statute, and about 156,000 currently to get a constitutional amendment on. So if people have paid signature gatherers, they're probably going to get things on the ballot. I just wanted to make counselors aware of that. That's what's going on here in Oregon. That's the quick little state ledge update. And then finally, the interim calendar. We've got legislative days coming up November 17 through 19. We've got a revenue forecast coming up on November 19th. We then have another round of legislative days, January 13th through January 15th. Some of those deadlines are the legislative concept draft deadline is November 21st. Those drafts need to be returned by January 9th from Legislative Council, and then the actual drop deadline is January 16th. The dates for the 2026 legislative session are February 2nd through March 9th. With that, Madam Mayor, that is my report. And I think Courtney has a pretty good exercise in going through some of our policy statements and our framework that we want to concentrate the rest of the meeting on.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have questions for Mr. Martin? No? Okay. Moving on then. Hello, everybody.
Today we are spending some time going through the policy statements and the funding priorities for our state and federal work that is ahead of us. I want to just say quickly so that everybody understands, the council gives us, so the committee reflects on all of these priorities and gives them to the council, and the council approves our policy direction. So it can be iterative. It doesn't have to stay today at whatever we decide, but and we can go back and change them through that same process whenever you'd like. But we are stuck until the council gives us direction. And so we can use the ones that we've been using in previous sessions, but it would be really helpful to have some clarity about the direction that you all want to take the next session, especially as we've just illustrated, that things are a little bit different than usual. And that direction will really help us as especially as the state session gets going on a very quick pace. And in some of these interim conversations about budget cuts that might impact city programs. So I wanted to show you that I've switched things up. I tried to put the funding priorities at the front. Does everybody have? Yes, good. And so, because I think that's really what we tend to focus on is what is our funding priorities and the policy statements we use when we're in active session. But having clarity about our funding priorities can help us now as some of these interim conversations are occurring, including legislative days. If we get to the end of today and we need more time with the policy statements, maybe we could send the funding priorities to council first as a way to get clarity and guidance, but you are driving. So on the state funding priorities, you'll see payment in lieu of taxes. You'll see airport resiliency and emergency power. Airport terminal master plan. This is a set list that we've been using for a while, so you should talk to each other about whether you want to pull anything off, focus us, add things. This is your time. You'll also see Peace Plaza beautification, River Road slide mitigation, and we need sustained funding for operating the shelter programs. And then when you all were talking last time, we added transit occupancy tax. I think you asked us to put on here the
care team.
the care team.
Yeah, my notes show from our last legislative meeting, I'd asked to have that added as well.
You did, and I did not.
That's okay.
Forgot. But the care team, I think what we might want to call, I don't even know what the acronym stands for. I've lost track.
Oh, I saw it once.
Critical area response and evaluation.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Got it.
Area response.
I've
and
been
evaluation.
very engaged in this program.
This is a really good acronym. I would like to just call it as a parenthetical, refer to it as like a fire QMHP co-response, if that's okay.
A mental health professional, I think the fire chief didn't want to pay
Say
that.
QM.
QMHPs can be really hard to find. There are lower level licensed mental health professionals. So I
Okay.
wouldn't want to peg us to that particular opportunity. There are other mental health professionals that are easier to fill.
With
that role.
an emergency medical response.
Yeah, so you wouldn't want to just call it mental health professionals, what our fire chief has been calling it, because that's vague enough to encompass everything and not hand this into a QMHP, which are really
Yes.
hard to find these days.
Good idea. So are you guys okay with this approach that we put funding priorities at the front? And B, do we want to talk about the list?
I'm okay with it. I think it's a great idea to put it first.
Okay,
Same.
I do want to talk about the list.
I see nodding, and then we can talk about the list. Do you want me to give you
I realized too that this is shorthand, so there are actually one pagers that talk about the need and the cost that we're asking for.
Mhm.
Would it benefit us to have
To see
that
that?
information on here?
I think so.
I agree.
If I'm to it.
I'm asking, even though I know the answer, that's
Mhm.
terribly rude. I know what all of these are, and it's a mixed bag. So River Road slide mitigation, last I looked, was up at 20 million. Peace Plaza beautification is at about, I think, 2.5 or 2. And having a bunch of different kinds of priorities and different funding levels can sometimes help us, because as we're having conversations with different legislators, we may know, oh, this one really likes emergency planning. This is something that they might want to help us with. And so we have a bunch of different funding ranges too, easy to put into some package, harder. So we can talk about however you want to approach it, but that's why the bag is really mixed. The airport terminal master plan, I don't even know off the top of my head. Airport resiliency and emergency power, I feel like is about 750. And then the payment in lieu of taxes, we've been reticent to put a number on it because of, we know how much it could be. And we didn't want to peg anyone to a lower number than they might be thinking. So that was more of a wider range, but we can certainly put numbers to this before we would take it for approval to council. So as you wish, let's talk about it. Can you?
Madam CSO, I have a question.
Sorry, I didn't see your hand.
No worries. So as you talk about those, you mentioned a one pager for each one of those items.
We have developed.
Say that one more time.
We have developed those over the years, and we use those in one-on-ones with different legislators, or when sometimes there's a point in the legislative process where if there's an emergent need for us to provide that number and that justification because it's going into some kind of a funding package or a proposal. And so we always refresh those at the beginning of the session so we're ready.
Got it. And those one pages will be shared with the entire council?
As at whatever direction you all give us.
Got it.
We can
Okay,
do that.
thank you.
We can certainly do that. I'm not prepared to do that at this moment because I have not dusted them off for, making sure that the funding ask is accurate because costs are constantly going up for some of these capital projects. So I would need a little bit of time to fine tune. And for example, on the payment in lieu of taxes, we've been using some numbers for like, I think 2022 taxes. And we have updated numbers. So we're in the process of making that more relevant to 2025. So those things are not quite finished, but we certainly can when they're ready.
And just as a follow-up to that, since we're talking about payment in lieu of taxes, and I know that we've gone down this road for several years now, and I referenced in, I think, a work session or city council meeting a while back in regards to just what that funding could look like, feel like, or sound like. And one of the things that I threw on the table, and I would love to have Justin's input on this, is that when it comes to what the governor's office can pay for and what they will actually do, can we talk about actually, giving them some kind of statement or a balance sheet, just find a way to make sure that we can have them pay for the services that we're rendering. Is that an opportunity for us to talk about that now, or should we talk about that in January?
I think there might be some legal implications that we would need to better understand. I don't think it's just a legislative or a lobbying question.
Okay.
And the way we have framed the pitch, so hang tight just a second. But the way we've talked about it is that residents and businesses pay property taxes, and it functions like kind of an insurance. You
Mhm.
pay for it so that you know that fire and police will respond when you have a need.
Right.
It's harder to, that's a little bit of a intangible way of thinking about it, because it's not necessarily a direct service. It's so that you have the knowledge that you're paying for it so that they'll come when you need. That's been, so if that's true, and that's the way we fund public safety services in Oregon, then however much they aren't paying is the starting point for what they could pay in lieu of taxes. So
Right.
that's the idea, rather than a direct service payment. We can certainly change how we're talking about it if that would be easier. And we're always learning. For example, from the meetings that Mayor Hoy participated in with Justin last session, we heard, well, what makes Salem different? Because there are a lot of Oregon cities that are holding a lot of state property. And we were able to get more clarity about that. So for example, if you have a university, you have quite a lot of state property inside your city, but universities have other ways of paying for fire and police response to the campus. They often use student fees and other kinds of resources to supply that service. And so that's what makes us different, is that we the city are providing police response. OSP is not staffed in a way to support all of the city properties, nor should all of the properties within the city. And fire is, we respond to all of the state facilities too. So that's the way we've been talking about it, but we're certainly able to learn and adapt if you have other suggestions. And we continue to have these meetings and learn how we can, it's sort of like when you prepare a resume, you test it in a lot of different ways so that you can create a resume that will work in most situations. It's the same here, right? We're dealing with a lot of folks who have a lot of different opinions, and we need to understand those so that we can be best understood as we write our pitch. I have a question.
Madam Mayor, can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure. Go right ahead, sir.
Oh, thank you. So with your proposal, Madam CSO, so with the list of everything on top, the Peace Plaza, payment in lieu of taxes, will some of that conversation about funding, will that shift to a work session, A, and B, if it doesn't shift to a work session, how do we get the input, from those counselors that are on the finance committee?
This is a great question. I've not really considered how to get input from the finance committee on legislative matters, but that's a really great way of thinking about it. You may not be able to see, but I think Josh Eggleston, our CFO, is part of our staff support for this work. So I think mostly what we rely on is the intersection of our staff who support council as a whole, but also have direct responsibilities to individual committees. And so we're trying to make those connections as a staff group in our, so that we can make the best, most effective use of the legislative committee and the finance committee. So we're hopefully making those connections. I feel like we're pretty good at doing that so far. And then also just a quick reminder that everyone on staff is so much more than the person that you see in front of you, because they're also contributing to broader rulemaking and have a bunch of different associations to which they are affiliated. I'm like Eunice is sitting, I'm pointing at you, Eunice. Eunice is sitting here and she's part of the Oregon Planning Association, APA. And then Jessica, as you know, is part of the Housing Authorities of Oregon. So everybody, and I know, sorry, I could keep going. Sarah is part of the Oregon Economic Development Association. Julie's involved actively in the transportation. Mark Bechtel served on some of the League of Oregon Cities transportation work. And I know, Julie, you were integrally involved too. So So staff as a whole have a lot of awareness of state issues as well as city issues and the council's interests and needs across all the different intersecting work that we do. We could certainly stop by the finance committee and ask them the question if that's the direction of this group.
Thank you.
Would you like to talk about the priorities?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry,
That's a good idea.
I feel like my voice.
You're doing fine. You're doing fine. I mean, historically, our legislative priorities and policy statements go to the full council. That way, every councilor has an opportunity to ask questions at a council meeting. That's typically been how we address that because that includes all members of finance committee, for example. It's one of the only areas where we could have that robust conversation with all 9 of us.
I have a question for Justin Martin. Having been at the Capitol this year with you probably 20 times in different meetings, one thing that struck me, and maybe you can help us all to understand or help us all to better focus. When the dollar amount, say for instance, for payment in lieu of taxes seems to roll somewhere between, Kevin Mannix and Tom Anderson's $7 million to, well, actually we'd settle for 2. That kind of conversation. I have a real thing for wanting to know what the real number is so that we actually have a target and we can stand on it. Can you tell me how that works or how it should be done differently?
No, I think it's a very good question, Madam Mayor. I think my philosophy has always been you need to ask for what you actually need. And I think we can certainly justify that need. When Courtney talks about our messaging and why that is so important, we want to make sure all 9 members of council are on board. We want to make sure that our advocates, your constituents, also understand what we're facing. We want to make sure that your advocates, your professional advocates, myself, Courtney, and others that answer questions from the public are all on that same line of messaging. Where it gets dicey is when you overlay the things that Courtney talked about. You've got other cities and other communities facing shortfalls. You've got the state facing a $500 million shortfall, but we still have, and then we also have young legislators. I don't mean young in the sense of age, but we do have inexperienced legislators who are new to their positions. We've also got some that have been there for a while. So I mention that because I want to make sure expectations are realistic. We've got legislators, who are conflicted because they represent multiple communities. But again, I think we have areas and levers that we can pursue. And I think I mentioned this at our last meeting, Mayor, when we reached out to Kevin Mannix because he sits on the Capital Planning Commission. You also sit on the Capital Planning Commission. In my meetings with Brett Haynes, who is legislative administration, who is doing all the construction, is concerned about public safety, realizes the impact that this protest era and these rallies that we see have a tremendous impact on our public safety, both our fire and our police. So we have a champion within that office who we are then trying to make sure that that messaging also plays well with him so he can introduce that either in the Capital Planning Commission or in general budget talks or within the confines of his budget around, in and around that area. I think I talked a little bit about the Court Street side is now losing its natural barrier for the construction project that's going on at the Capitol. So we are trying to find these ways. And as Courtney talks about the importance of that messaging, I want to make sure that the entire city, whether that's paid staff, whether that's your constituents, whether that's our elected officials, are all on the same page when we go into that and trying to find that hook in the face of what we are facing, these huge budget shortfalls with younger, with newer legislative presence in that building is a real art. And we are trying and working hard every day. As the mayor talked about, we had multiple meetings. Everybody agrees with the fact that we need more public safety. Everybody agrees with the fact of what Salem's going through. We just have to find a way to show that to folks and to show what those difficulties are and how much impact that really does have on our public safety components. Hope that gets to your question, Madam Mayor, and hopefully that wasn't a rant on cold meds.
No, I appreciate that, Justin.
I think that's really useful and important context, Justin, and I think maybe what, oh, and there's the CFO. Just a moment, please. But I think maybe what you're asking is, are we asking for 7 or are we asking for 2 million?
That's also in there.
And I think the hesitancy on my part, I'm only gonna speak for myself, is that if we ask for 2, that's the starting point for the negotiation.
Sure.
If we ask for 7, the starting point is very different.
I understand that. And I also felt the discomfort in not having an established narrative for why we're there and to be able to speak to that. I want to offer that to these meetings in this next go around. So this is my way of wanting to improve my own, the way I show up in those spaces. And I want to be well prepared for that. The other piece I would add on the list is when we talk about the real need and the priorities in order, every time, Justin, when we came to that point in the meeting where Peace Plaza came up, I just felt almost a little bit like, oh my gosh, why are we talking about Peace Plaza? We have miles and miles and miles of water pipe between Guerin Island and Salem that are not going to hold up in the event of a natural disaster. You know, even not the big one, you know, we have, we kind of have bigger issues in my site. And so what do we do about an item like that? Is that really our priority to drop Peace Plaza improvements into we need battery backup at the airport and we need money for public safety conversation?
This is a good starting point. Oh, I see Councilor Brown, you have your hand up, but this is a great starting point. I think what you're advocating for is considering removing that from the list of priorities.
Or just for now?
That's what I'm hearing. Councilor Brown, did you want to jump in?
Yes, I do want to echo what Madam Mayor just said, because I think there is value when she or with any of us go into these spaces and we are reiterating, you know, what our top priorities are. I think it does matter, because if we say we negotiated $2 million, a part of me goes back to, what does that $2 million look like, feel like, or sound like almost like a statement, right? Like, we're spending this much when it comes to public resources. We're spending this much when it comes to anything that we provide for any other entity in the city. So part of me says there's value in having a breakdown of the services that we do render to the state, so we can see what that funding would cost, right? I mean, we've seen this a gazillion times. When the CFO gives a presentation, rarely, if ever, does he leave out the amount of what it could cost. So part of me says we need to figure out what that looks like so the entire council can be on the same page. So we'll know, hey, we need this because we're spending this amount.
We can certainly add that to the little one pager. That's easy enough done.
If I can, Courtney, a couple things. One, to reiterate the mayor's point. I mean, when we left the meeting with Co-Chair Lieber, her biggest request to us was make this a narrative that we can all understand.
Yep.
That was also her main point in talking to the lobby. When you come in requesting financial needs, we need that narrative on why it not only benefits you, but why it benefits the state. We can make that point. I know we can, for sure. The second point that both Dr. Brown and the mayor made, we have to be upfront about our need. That is critical. Now, that doesn't mean we just say, oh, it's 7.65 million or bust, but people need to be aware of what the true need is to keep that building safe and to keep our community safe. So that's great. But 3, small wins over time equal big wins. So even if we can't get 7.65 and somebody comes and says, hey, here's 2, okay, we're not going to turn that down, but we're also going to expect or have an expectation of building that small win over time, which over 5, 10, 15, 20 years becomes a big win. And then one final point on this, in my conversations with legislative administration, the AG, the Attorney General, who is another construction phase that is going on right in our backyard, is also very, very concerned about public safety. And what we are continuing to see in the public realm at the federal level and the state level and even the local level is really getting elected officials upset and nervous. So I think we've got opportunity here. Again, I think that narrative is key. Not shying away from what we absolutely need is key. And then also the theory of small wins over time really do equal big success. And I think we just need to keep working on that and keep plugging away. That's why this narrative is so important. That's why the messaging is so important. And again, to all the counselors' points here today, that's why priorities are so important.
So I just want to recognize that it's clear to me, the direction is clear. So is there anything else that people want to add to the direction you're giving us on the capital district? Or should we move into the other priorities with the remaining 15 minutes? Because you, Mayor Hoy, had an idea about taking one off. Do you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I can do without Peace Plaza beautification for this particular cycle. I think it's hard to make the persuasive narrative that it's beneficial for the city and the state, to Justin's point. I think there's a lot of public safety concerns down at the Capitol Mall. I used to be in the Department of Justice, and we had a lot of threats against members of staff, including myself. I was arguing a case to the Oregon Supreme Court when there was a bomb threat that was made. That was years ago. That was long before 2016. That was long before our current era. And so I just wanted to add that anecdotally, I certainly know what it's like when you are in the Department of Justice. You have safety threats and concerns, and DOJ is headquartered 1 block away from the Capitol Mall. So I totally appreciate that and just wanted to reflect on that. And yeah, that's all I had. Let's move on. I know we have very little time.
I'm gonna call in when I leave.
Okay.
Okay.
Mayor, Councilor Schaefer is seeing behind you in his raised hand. Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. You didn't see me. I'm making an assumption. I don't see Counselor Gwynn. Maybe she's just not.
She's not here.
She was planning to come late,
Okay.
and her thing must have expanded.
So that makes me feel that I have the ability to ask a
Wayne?
question. I think too that even though I recognize River Road, mitigation has been asked for quite a bit, and the numbers are big. And back to Justin's point, that it feels like a Salem need, but it doesn't feel like a state need. And it may be that we lower that on the priority list or adjust it in the sense of, can it be divided? Like we do a certain section, or if it's just a section. Again, just trying to not have the numbers be so high. And though I know that Julie has been working on this a very long time, I just question if that starts to make the legislators' eyes glaze over.
We really use that project as an alternate way to get across the bridge, across the waterway. So our messaging about this project is as an alternate way should the bridges go down.
Perfect.
Or become disrupted. So what's missing from this list is the messaging. Yet, if a 20 million ask right now doesn't feel like it fits for this particular session, please give us that direction and we will remove it from the list for this session. Julie.
I just wanted to say on the River Road slide, the last grant application we prepared for, it was actually to do a design refinement to be able to get at some of those specific either feasibility or costs. And so we actually have a lower cost. And it was for a federal grant through the Protect program, and they yanked the program at the last minute, so we did not actually submit it. But we do have the dollar amount, and it's closer to 5 or 6 million for doing that analysis.
It's great news.
It won't, it doesn't fix the problem, but it gets us, it advances us to
the next phase, and then we could add whatever, once that phase was done, we could ask again.
Right.
So
And the quick politics, Courtney, I'm sorry, just the quick politics on this one. Representative Evans gets a portion of Salem. He has Independence Monmouth. This is a connector between that. He's also the chair of the Emergency Management Committee, one of our own. It's something good for him, and he does have a certain amount of experience in that building. So I do like this one because it's helpful both to his district, Salem, and those other communities in the case of an emergency.
Thank you.
So I need to just take a quick minute and notice that it's 10 minutes to 12. Notice that we're having conversations that suggest to me we need to do a better job preparing you to have this conversation. And November, our regular date, and December are days when you would rather be with your families. So I want to wonder out loud, I feel a sense of urgency about getting this finished, at least the federal and state priorities, because we need to be able to advocate for the city. So would you all be opposed to meeting on a different Friday so that we can continue to advance this work?
I'm in favor of that.
Excellent.
Me too.
Thank you.
I do not personally need more time, but my other counselors do, and that's good enough for me. I am fine if I were to make a decision today, I would remove Peace Plaza beautification from the list, make sure the care team, it's actually capital area, not critical area. I misspoke. Add that to the state funding priorities, and I support the legislative policy statements. These are the statements we've had on the books for years. So I see no
agreement
need
with that.
to
I do
change.
wish I had a dollar amount though for that care number.
Let me go back. I don't think it's appropriate for us to ask you to make a decision on a 20 million versus now it's become a 5 to 6 without knowing what you're looking at.
Mhm.
So if you could just give us, I'll ask Tammy to do a poll for the next time we could meet. My intent is to bring you a list that has the project, couple of sentences, only a couple of sentences, and the dollar amount. We will continue to build the one pagers for all the other reasons we use them, which are grants, which are response to legislators and for your own communications. But I think in order to make a informed decision, you might need more information.
I know that from our past meetings, the fire chief and the CFO told us what the proposed cost of the care team would be. It was hundreds of thousands, not millions. I would love to, but seen in writing is really important. We can't remember every stat that comes before us at council. I wish I could. That would be an amazing gift. But it was 200,000. I seem to recall what the pilot project would be. That does not include the cost of the mental health professional. I ideally would love to get funding for that in the event that Marion County doesn't come through and approve the mental health person, because they're the ones who are supposed to provide it. But if for some reason they say no, it would be nice if we have that money from the state to hire.
And the 2 was for 6 months, it wasn't for a year.
That is correct.
And
Yeah.
And I also don't know if we had our druthers, would we be limiting to 1 unit? Or
Yeah,
would we,
that's fair.
so again, I wanna pause. I'm taking the direction
Got it.
and want to be more clear about what we're considering. Sorry, Councilor Brown?
Madam Chair, so one final question before we adjourn. On that list, you have the funding for sheltering programs, I believe.
Right, and I think that that's more of a policy that these last 2 things are kind of mixed in, but I think it's my impression that council would like us to continue advocating for sustained funding for sheltering. Not that the city is in the business, but that we find it to be critically important to our community that those funds continue to flow. The second issue is about the transit occupancy tax. I think that has been an issue that has gotten a lot of enthusiasm from legislators and from League of Oregon Cities, but also Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association and Travel Salem. And I suspect that issue will continue to be at the forefront of topics. And so we can do a better job separating the issues that we think are going to be hot buttons from the funding requests. And you'll see that from us going forward, but that's the reason it's there. Not that the city would get back in the business, but that we would be assured that those critical resources in our community would continue to flow.
Good. Okay, thank you. I just needed clarity on that, so.
And wouldn't you like to see that in writing in maybe a couple of sentences before you vote on it? I think so.
We absolutely need to continue funding shelters in the area. And whether the state gives the money to the city to administer or the state gives it directly to shelters, it doesn't matter to me so long as we address our crisis on our streets. We need to continue shelter and services to support. We want to actually reduce homelessness rather than just move people from camp to camp. So anyway, that's where I come from on that issue.
And we as a city can't do that. We need help from the state, and it is a state entity as well.
And the state's made it a priority.
Yeah.
So
State and county.
So we have a lot to do, and I will immediately step by Tammy's desk and ask her to poll you all for availability. I wonder if we might want to have a bit more time as well. So
That's gonna be your need. You have to decide what needs.
I think
I think an hour's more than sufficient.
really,
To go through these?
I think if you're able to prepare this and get it out to us.
oh, well, that's not a concern of mine. I just noticed that that there's a lot of opportunity for conversation between and among the council, and I think that that's an important thing to give time to. So we'll poll for an hour, and if there's a need, we'll look for longer.
I think that would be the best way to go.
Excellent.
Works for me. Thank you.
Works for me. This is Julie Hoy.
Mayor Julie Hoy, as the chair of this group, would you mind allowing us to adjourn?
I would be delighted. We are adjourned.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Thank you, folks.